back to From the Farmyard, everyone, and we are excited to get into this next topic of gardening. Today's episode is going to be interesting, to say the least. There are some things that people completely agree with, and there's some things people don't agree with. This is what we found from our own research, so it's not, I mean, some of it will be opinion, but most of it is just the fact, and that's the fact of it.
Right.
But but our first topic is going to be GMO seeds, genetically modified. I don't know what the O means off the top of my head.
Organisms. I think it's organisms.
Organisms. Yeah, that's what
But
I
I think
too,
I think it's more so people just say GM, so genetically modified. So we're talking about seeds, the different types of seeds, and what packets will say, and just kind of going over and educating you a little bit about this.
Yes. So let's start off with something that a lot of people might not think is true or whatever. Seeds that you are buying from the store or online, they're not genetically modified. You might think they are. They're not. At least here in the US where we are, you are not allowed, or big companies or anyone really, I don't think is allowed to sell genetically modified seeds. It's not possible. If to get them, you have to go through so much paperwork. You have to show where you are. You have to be a certain distance away from certain thing. It's a whole process, and you have to make sure that you're not going into the watersheds. I'm pretty sure I've read a lot on it, but it's a lot that you have to go into, so you're not going to be buying genetically modified seeds.
Right. So when the packet says non-GMO, that's just basically an extra like marketing thing just to slap on there. Yeah, our seeds are non-GMO. But even if you buy a pack of seeds that doesn't have that label on there, there's no need to worry because all seeds are non-GMO.
Yeah, and most of the time they put non-GMO on the seed packets because some people think, oh, because it doesn't say non-GMO, that means that these seeds are genetically modified. They're not. It's just they've gotten so many questions that to keep their, however it is that they respond to those questions down, that they can just put it on the seed packet and eliminate an entire problem.
Exactly.
But yeah, so all in all, that topic is no seeds can be genetically modified that you are going to be getting as a backyard farmer.
And I kind of want to talk about just like a little bit here, what are genetically modified and why aren't they sold in stores? So genetically modified is seeds that have been modified to contain specific characteristics, such as disease resistant, less pesticides used, faster growing, etc. And the process, the process is
less water intake, things like that. Sorry.
Right. You're fine. The process is typically done in a scientific lab, let's say, transferring DNA into the plant cells. And then it's because it's so much work is put into it by like these labs and stuff, they can't sell them to normal backyard farmers like ourselves. These seeds are sold to more massive agricultural organizations. So like your big farmers that provide potatoes, corn, wheat for all of the country. Like those are what GMO seeds go to, because obviously they're putting in so much work to feed the nation, right? They want a plant that is going to be pest resistant, disease resistant, less pesticides they have to use on their crops or whatever. So just kind of that's what GMO stands for with seeds, and why you're not getting them in your backyard seed packets. Just little.
Yeah, and it's something, and they want something that's not gonna die right off the bat. They're going to lose as few as possible to maintain their income.
They want something that's hardy and that'll last and have a good harvest.
Yeah, exactly. You had one more point on this, and then I want to add on to this next topic that you say.
Yeah, so whenever you're buying non-GMO seeds, like it has the label on it, that doesn't necessarily mean that all non-GMO seeds are organic. There is a difference there. So while all organic seeds are non-GMO, because of protocol. To sell an organic seed, they have to go through these lists of like to be completely organic certified, and one of them is to be non-GMO. But not all non-GMO seeds qualify as organic. So organic mostly has to do with how the plant is raised, and while non-GMO has to do with the genetic makeup of the seed. So there is a difference there between non-GMO and organic. Just wanted to throw that out there.
Yes.
So.
And it's the main thing with all that is, are you spraying things on your plants to keep pests away? Are you putting something in the soil that is not needed? I mean, it's needed to keep some things away, but it's not needed ultimately.
Because that's with organic, they're not babied, they're not taken care of. It's survival of the fittest. It's just
I grow
plant.
Exactly. I grow everything organically. If I have a plant that fails, the plant fails. I don't save anything from it. But if I have one plant that's doing outstanding, I'll take cuttings from it. I'll propagate with like tomatoes. Use that as an example. I'll cut the suckers off of them, let those root, plant those in the ground, and I'll get more plants from that already strong plant. I don't use any pesticides, anything in my garden. I believe in completely natural growing practices. I don't grow in the ground, but I do grow organically. I believe that, like, I grow flowers too because I want to attract the pollinators in here. And when you're doing that, when you're spraying pesticides and all that, you're taking the ecosystem out of your garden. You're taking the spiders out of the garden that eat the bugs. You're taking the ladybugs, the bees for pollination, the butterflies for pollinating, everything. I had bees and butterflies and everything else sleeping in my garden at night instead of returning to where they were supposed to, because my garden was that safe. I would come out here and there'd be like a layer of bees on top of one of my bean plants, and I'm like, you're not supposed to be there, but I'm gonna let it go. And in the morning, I'd go out and they'd all be buzzing around, and then I'd water, and they'd start sipping on the water. They knew that my little garden was a place for them to be safe, and it was not a place they needed to worry about taking in something that they did not need at all.
We do organic gardening too, so no pesticides, no sprays, no nothing like that, because we believe that, I mean, that's the way it was intended to be, straight from the ground and brought up. They didn't baby their plants, so that's the way we do it, and that's the way we'll probably continue to do it.
But our next topic is heirloom seeds. There are pros and cons to growing heirlooms, and there's also a big debate on what is considered an heirloom. I read something that it was, I think, 100 years old. I think you read something that it was
It has to be like before. Some people will only buy heirloom seeds if they originate from like before the Great Depression, because hybridization started in the 1930s. So after that, they started, cross-pollinating plants and breeding and getting different combinations, whereas heirloom plants farther back from that were just brought up by just centuries and cultivated.
And let me say something with that. With the Great Depression, I mean, everybody knows what that is. It was a time when everything was at its practical lowest. They did things because it was a way to make an income. And when we're talking about, like, we'll get into this in a minute, but hybridizing does not mean they're genetically modified. It means that you grew two different varieties of a plant, whether you grew a sun gold cherry tomato and a sweetie baby cherry tomato. It just means that those cross-pollinated, and the variety that you're getting from that is not, it has both components from both plants into it. It could be good, it could be bad, but it's not genetically modified. It's just pollinated by something else.
Exactly.
But we're not on hybrids right now. We're on heirlooms.
We'll get to hybrids in a minute.
Exactly. I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but
heirlooms
plants are.
You go ahead.
You can go ahead. No, you can go ahead. Go ahead. You're good.
Okay. Heirloom plants are basically an old plant that have been cultivated and maintained by farmers and gardeners over a long period of time. They're open pollinated plants, which means there's no human intervention. So like they're just open pollinated. But the cool thing with heirloom is heirloom seeds you can save heirloom seeds. I'm pretty sure generally you can save heirloom seeds because they're it's been the same plant over a long period of time, so it'll continue to be that, if I'm correct on what I'm saying, but I'm not totally sure.
What you mean by that, you can save any seeds, and it is, I mean, it's, I thought the same thing, but with heirloom, well, you can save any seeds first off, but with heirloom, you're more likely to get something that is
What you
like the
started
parent
with.
plant. Exactly, because it's been, now if you only grow one variety of tomatoes and it's an heirloom, any seeds that you save are going to be pure seeds. They're going to be pure hybrids or pure heirlooms, not hybrids. But you can also save the seeds from hybrids, and but that just doesn't, they're not going to be exactly like the parent plant. If you're growing 5 different varieties of tomatoes, you could have one that's 2 completely different parent plants, but you can still save the seeds, and sometimes you can get a better harvest, and or sometimes you get something that's a complete flop and it's not good at all. But by any means, if it did come down to saving seeds, you could save hybrid seeds, you can save heirloom seeds, and you're going to get food from it either way.
Right. But with heirloom, you're going to have a better chance of getting what you started with, which was the parent plant. Yeah. Whereas with hybrid, which we're going to get into in a minute here, it could be something different. But we'll get into that.
Yes. Yes. Another thing with heirlooms is they are, along with, this also goes hand in hand with what we're going to mention later with the hybrid, they're less pest resistant because they haven't been cross-pollinated, they haven't been genetically modified, which you can't buy those, so in either way that doesn't matter. But they haven't been tampered with in any way where it's just a pure heirloom. So they're going to be less pest resistant, they're going to be typically smaller, producing less in some cases, everything's different, but producing less, just things like that. So
right. So I think that's everything for heirloom.
And you grow mainly heirloom. I think you said that a minute ago.
A lot of the things we grow is heirloom. But we're gonna do lots of seed videos, so we'll get into like another episode. We're gonna talk about like seed companies that maybe you want a company that just sells heirloom. We can talk about different companies where we buy from, companies that we know of, and our favorite seeds, stuff we grow.
And I'm compiling a big list of seed companies. Ones that are well known, ones that are not well known, small businesses that are just starting out, things like that. I have a long list and it's growing.
Right.
But that's all for the future videos. Our last topic with this is hybrid seeds. Hybrid seeds are, like I mentioned earlier, it's just 2 different parent plants. They're not something that's been handed down generation after generation. But the funny thing about this is hybrids can actually become heirloom if you're looking at if it's over 100 years old. Hybrids can become heirloom if you continue to grow, like if you're only growing, or if you grew 2 different varieties of tomato plants your first year, and then the next year you only grew seed, or the seeds that you grew were only from a plant that had been cross-pollinated by those 2 plants, and you kept saving them and kept saving them, they would eventually stabilize out to where it was what in the seed. It would have whatever bad traits it's going to have or whatever good traits, but you continue to breed the best.
Over time, the characteristics would end up stabling from generation to generation. They would end up leveling out, and you would have an heirloom seed. So
you could continue to save. I think I read something that said that it takes like 5 to 10 years
Mm-hmm.
for it to become stable, but it
Right.
doesn't necessarily qualify as an heirloom. But after that point, if you continue to grow seeds and save from only that one plant, and that's all you're growing to where it can't be cross-pollinated, then you're going to end up with the exact same fruit, the exact same plant year after year. And it's going
So
to be used to your environment as well.
right,
Sorry.
right. No, you're fine. So what is a hybrid plant? What is a hybrid seed? It's when a gardener will cross-pollinate, or sometimes doesn't bees will cross-pollinate itself. It just happens.
The bees, the wind,
Yeah.
farmers on purpose will do it
Yep.
just to my great grandmother, no, my great great grandmother, she actually was very big into crossing gourds. I didn't know this
Oh.
until like a year ago. She would cross so many different gourds and save the seeds from them
Mm-hmm.
that people were like marveling at the gourds that she had grown because they were so different than anything they'd ever seen.
Oh wow. That's so cool. But
Yes.
what it is it's cross-pollinating. You would take two different varieties of plants, whether it be, like you said, maybe it's a really sweet tomato that you want to keep growing, but you also want a variety that's very prolific and produces a lot of fruit. You cross-pollinate the two parent plants, and you produce an offspring plant, or a hybrid that contains the best traits of each of the parent plants. Now, there's like, go
They're
ahead.
not necessarily, before you say this, they're not necessarily going to be the best traits from each one. Maybe
Right.
one trait, or maybe it's one bad trait from one, but once you continue to like breed them on, it will stabilize out. Maybe
Yeah,
that trait
like you
will
said,
be there
yeah,
after that.
stabilizing. Right.
Sorry.
There's like, you're fine. You're fine. There's like generations with hybridization, and I was kind of neat to me. There's like, they'll like label it, so like F1, F2, F3 seeds, and like whenever you see that, it's like, what does that mean? So the number just corresponds to the generation of the seed. So in other words, that means F1 would be the kid from the parent plants, F2 would be the grandkids, and F3 would be the great grandkids. And the more generations, the less seed genetics will drift, and more luck you will have with seed saving and getting a similar plant in the next generations. So, like you said, if you do it more and more over the years, the characteristics will stabilize, and you could end up with an heirloom seed. So,
And it doesn't even have to be years. You can do, I mean, some people might only save um, if you have one plant that's doing really well, you can save seeds from the first tomato that fruits.
mm-hmm.
And then you can save those same seeds that same year, and you can grow those same seeds that same year if you have a long growing season. So you could do 2 generations in 1 year
Right.
and knock it out like that if you were really on top of it, though. But most places don't have that long of a growing season, so maybe you can only do one at a time. But either way, do what works for you. Sometimes hybrids work best because you have a lot of pests.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't, and or maybe you have no pests, but heirlooms are the way to go. But then it's all personal preference.
Yeah. And
So
it's based
fine,
on
you're right.
possible areas that you may live in. If you live in a cold climate,
Yeah,
you may need a specific seed, and that's what hybrid seeds are there for. If you need a specific plant that is, maybe you do have a lot of pests, and maybe you just can't keep up with it. Maybe if you do spray, maybe that stuff isn't working, and you just need a plant that can do it on its own. So it's all, like you said, it's all
yeah,
preference. Whatever works best for you.
mhm,
Choose your seeds according. So
yeah.
yeah.
They have ones that are made to handle the cold a little bit better than others. There's
Mm-hmm.
ones that are handled for the droughts of Arizona. I don't know if this is if this is an heirloom now or not. The Arkansas Traveler's tomato. It's originated in Arkansas because they have a really humid environment. But tomatoes don't like humid spaces; they prefer it hotter.
Right.
So what they did, what I haven't read the full story or whatever, but I guess what happened was this guy went out, picked tomatoes that did the best in the environment, saved the seeds, and he kept doing it. And now all across Arkansas or in humid places, you can grow those tomatoes and they're not going to succumb to the same sicknesses, the diseases, anything else that other plants are going to come from or contract from that. But
Yeah.
Everything is personal preference, as we both said.
I think that's everything. Did we go over all of everything we wanted to?
Yeah, I think so. But I don't know if I said this in the beginning, but this month is opening. Well, this episode is starting the seed journey, our garden journey. Later this month, I'm going to be doing because it's February now when this is going up. Later this month, I'm going to be doing a seed unboxing on my channel. I just placed the order 2 or 3 days ago, but they don't ship out until the 13th of February. So
go check out his YouTube
that.
channel. I have it linked in the description. He doesn't post a lot, but I'm trying to get him to post more. So
she is. But that is going to be one video, seed unboxing. I might do my own garden planning on there. I've really already planned everything out, but maybe walk you guys through what we're doing, or unless we do a podcast episode, we can do it on here as well. But yeah, this is opening up into our gardening portion. We covered chickens just because nothing was growing when we started.
It was something we're comfortable with. Plus, this is the off season, so we're in winter. Yeah. Just now, we're getting closer to the spring, and we want to prep you for seeds and what you should be doing to prepare for your garden. Yeah. So,
for me on February 15th, I can start tomato seeds indoors. Most people, you can't do that. If you started your tomato plants indoors, they would get stunted because they'd reach a certain point and die because you're gonna be way too cold. Yeah. But our last frost date, I think, is April 13th. But I can really plant outside the beginning of April and just cover my stuff with a sheet, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I know. Lucky. I'm making you mine's here. Not. Mine's like halfway through summer.
She has 4 good months of growing, and I have complete opposite. I have 8 to
exactly. This what happens when you live up north, people. This is what happens.
Invest and move down south.
Oh, but I think that's everything for today's video.
Yes. We hope everyone has an amazing. Sorry. We hope that everybody has an amazing has an amazing week. And everybody has an amazing time since we've been not posting on YouTube. Last week we filled in with reels and posts and everything else, which the reels are going to still be coming out on Wednesday.
Yep.
And then posts are Monday and Friday.
Over on Instagram. Yeah.
We will see everybody next week and maybe in a garden live sometime.
See y'all.
Bye.